Okay, this video we're going to work you through how to make this angle object, how to think about creating this in CAD unlike using a pencil. So when we start looking at this particular object, some things to take note of. The lines that are running down through the center of this. Okay, these lines are telling you that one side is the same as the other. Okay, that the bottom is the same as the top. And when you look at this, you can see that it's very symmetrical, one side to the other. Here, I want you to also take note of, we learned how to do rectangles, we learned how to make shapes. These are shapes. This is a square, this is a rectangle, and then there's some angles here. Now, I'm not giving you any angle information, but I'm giving you a distance. Okay, so what we can do is work that distance. But first, let's start setting up some of this geometry. So we're going to go make this square, which is a 1 by 1, and then we're going to go ahead and make this square, or rectangle, which is going to be a 4 by 0.5. All right, so we're going to jump back over here into AutoCAD, and we'll go ahead and do that. So I'm going to jump into my warm-up drawing, and I'm going to go ahead and grab my rectangle tool. I'm going to click and pull, and I'm going to type in 1, tab, 1, and hit enter. That gives me my first 1 by 1 rectangle. Then the second rectangle I'm going to make, grab my rectangle tool, select the rectangle tool, click and pull, and now I'm going to go ahead, and since my blue highlight is at the bottom, so it's giving me that dimension first, I'm going to type in 0.5, hit tab, and then I believe that dimension was 4, and then hit enter, and there is my second rectangle. And I'm going to just jump back in here to make sure that's right. Yep, that's a 4 by 1.5, okay? So I can see that they're positioned pretty much centered on each other. So I'm going to jump back into AutoCAD, and I'm going to highlight one of the two, it doesn't matter which one, grab my move tool, and then I'm going to select the midpoint. Now the midpoint is the little triangle, not the geometric center, but the midpoint. Left click, bring it over to the midpoint, and left click, okay? If for some reason your midpoints are not turning on when you have a command active, you need to come down to your object snap settings. And you need to turn on your midpoints. Put a little check mark next to those tools. It's imperative that when you are running CAD, you have your endpoints, your midpoints, your center points, your geometric centers turned on. I also highly recommend intersection, extension, perpendicular, tangent, and parallel. Do not turn them all on. If you start turning node, quadrant, insertion, and these others on, it gets to be slightly more confusing when you are running CAD. So make sure you get those turned on. All right, so we have our two objects here set up, our two rectangles. Now, this is where things generally start getting crazy and befuddled for folks, because we're looking at, well, how do I deal with this? I don't have an angle. I don't have a length of this, but we do have a length, which is a linear length. So what my recommendation is, this is where you want to start learning how to draw lines, use them, and then lose them. So we're going to draw a 2.3-inch line from the midpoint on this rectangle straight out to find the location point for this rectangle. Okay? So jump back here into AutoCAD, grab my line tool, and this line would actually be considered a construction line when we have layers, but for now we're just using lines. We're going to mouse over this rectangle to the midpoint turns on. But first, grab your line tool, make sure it's on, then mouse over the rectangle, get that midpoint to turn on, left click, don't have to hold it, just move your mouse in the direction you want to go, and you type in 2.3, enter. Hit escape because I'm finished drawing that line. And what I have done is I've just set up the location of that next rectangle out here, okay? All right, so we got our point. I'm going to jump back and look at my drawing. So this is what I'm going to create next. And I'm going to make this rectangle. This is going to be a 0.4 by 2. So back in the AutoCAD, grab the old rectangle tool, come on over here, and just click and pull. Doesn't matter where we put it right now. So I'm going to put in there 0.4, tab, 2, well, that's a 5, 2, enter. So there's my rectangle, and I know what I'm going to do next is I'm going to move it from this location over to this point. So highlight it, grab the move tool, go from that little midpoint, left click, head on over, and left click. And now it has positioned itself where I want it. Now, the next step is that we're going to now take and draw lines from point to point. This is like playing connect the dots. Grab my line tool. I go from this endpoint to this endpoint. Click. Right click. Hit enter or hit escape. Either one works to finish that command. Endpoint to endpoint. Hit escape and command. And then this line that is here, I no longer need it. So I can highlight it and hit delete, and it goes bye-bye. And what I have now done is I've created half of this drawing. Well, actually a little more than half, because I already got this part over here. All right, so I got a little more than half of the drawing complete. And in CAD terms, I've got a whole lot more complete, because the next thing I'm going to do is use the mirror command. Okay, I'm going to use the mirror command. All right, so to use this command, it's up here on the ribbon bar. But first, I want to select what I want to mirror, because I want you to get used to selecting what you're going to mirror first. So I want to mirror all this stuff. So I did my little panning window. I grab a hold of it. I don't need to mirror this thing. That doesn't need to be mirrored. I don't need two of those, but I do need two of these. So once I do that, all right, I hit my mirror tool. Fantastic. And my command line says specify first point of mirror line. Well, the mirror line's the dead center. And that dead center is not going to be over here. It's not going to be over here. It's going to be right there on the midpoint, because that's the center of that rectangle. So I'm going to left click, don't need to hold, and then notice this whole thing is a spinning around. And then the second point of the mirror line is any point along that plane. So the easiest way to do it, come down to that midpoint, left click again, and then read the command line. It says erase source object. It says it down here, and it says it up here. Erase source objects, yes or no. Well, do I want to get rid of this? Erase? No, don't erase it. Keep it. And then there it is. There's your angle object. And then so the last things that we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're going to add some dimensions. Okay? So let's just go back. We'll just put the dimensions on that are given. That way I can be assured that what I have created is actually the part that I wanted to create. So there's my 6. I'm going to come down here and pull out there's 4. And now you can keep going back up and grabbing this linear dimension tool, because that's really the tool I want you to use, is the linear dimension tool for now. The dimension tool is a great tool, but I want you to get used to using specific tools here. So if I were to grab this and pull this down, you can also then right click and repeat the dim linear tool. Okay, so that right click tool is a pretty powerful tool that once you get into CAD a little more, you just need to right click and grab that tool again, and it keeps you moving and grooving instead of having to keep going all the way back up to here and then come back down and go back up and come back down. That right click is pretty quick. Okay, so once you get these things added, jump back and take a look at that PDF. So I'm missing that one, I'm missing this one. Other than that, I think I got most of them. So I'm going to jump back into here, linear tool, from here to here. That should be a 0.5er, which it is. This is going to be 1 and 1.5. Try to keep your dimensions nice and tidied up, all right, nice and lined up. And then the last thing, if you wanted to do this, you could go ahead and draw a line from one side to the other. But since we don't have center lines or center marks, this is not really necessary because we haven't gotten into layers yet. So we can turn that off. It's not needed. This would be a completed drawing for the warm-up drawing assignment. So I hope that this helps work you through this little angle object.